Yay, Craig. All right, this is Asteria, and I'm here with a bunch of dedicated readers and listeners. We're going to be going over chapter 8.79 of The Wandering Inn. Super exciting. We're on the final countdown to the end of the volume. So we're going to go ahead and start out with general impressions. If you guys would like to speak out loud, just ping me in the reactions channel. If you want to just type it up and I'll read it aloud, also type it up in the reactions channel. All right, so I'll start out with my general impressions of the chapter. It was a slow start for me, but by the time we got to the chapter, or part of the chapter, where oh gosh, anyway, it was a slow start of the chapter for me, but I just ended up losing it at various bits. Just could not stop laughing, and then we had that wonderful finish with Aaron at the very end with the gnomes and a big reveal of recalibrating the Deadlands to allow the skills to get started. And that just kind of, it's starting to tie together all these loose ends and different ends. And I think that's great to start to see that coming together. So that kind of wraps it up for me. Comrade Burv, why don't you go ahead and give it a go? What were your general impressions of the chapter?
There were just little, tiny things that I would see that, some things weren't tiny, but they had tiny implications, when we find out about the time god, Pirate is giving an in-universe explanation as to why, the time is just not right in the in-world. Why people say, oh, they went this distance in this time. Oh, it's because time doesn't work, that's why. There was a little cutaway joke that Aaron was trying to make, the days of the week, and it wasn't working in volume 7 or 6, and it was just fun to see that get a little nod. That's why it's happening. Besides that, I really love the chapter. It was a slow start for me, but when we really got into it, I couldn't put it down. I really liked the ending.
Oh yeah, absolutely agree. All right, Ren.
Yes, so in part, words don't describe how I feel about this chapter. I was less hyped for the Newt stuff. It was still really good, but it felt a bit slower. But everything in the Deadlands was just it was almost perfect. We just need more gnomes. The gnomes are great. I love them. And more Aaron. We always need more Aaron.
See, that's funny because I thought the strong part of the chapter was actually Nullmoot, and the weaker part was kind of the Deadlands until we sort of started getting more into the gnome Aaron interaction.
Yeah, I think I'm just biased because of my love of Aaron.
Fair enough. I am waiting to see what she will do. But the Nullmoot for me was really what sold it. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Any other general impressions? Donkey 2012 has to share that so many questions that we've had since the earliest volumes are starting to be answered, and we're getting about twice as many new questions to replace them. Courier, did you have any thoughts?
As having finished the first paragraph, I think this is an excellent chapter so far.
Okay, so Courier will be getting spoiled throughout our discussion today. Uderon really enjoyed Lynette cursing like a sailor. That was kind of the best part for them. And Void 22, you had some thoughts?
Yes. I actually agreed with you about really liking the Newt part of the chapter. It feels like I personally found that section to be a little slow throughout the course of the volume, and I really enjoyed all of the action finally coming together and climaxing with the Civil War here.
Yeah, finally kind of seeing the end of Lynette with all her plans in place and getting to but finally heading to Nullmoot, and sort of wrapping up that whole journey has been quite satisfying, especially since we've been waiting for Nullmoot since I think volume 2 is when it was first mentioned. Oshi, you had some thoughts?
Sure. I I think Pirate's just stitching together multiple chapters into one, and you can see the strain of it. Not that the work itself is strained, but the structural way that Pirate kind of kept pushing through the newt, and it's really a complete story if you look at it from the outside. If you cut off at the end with the beginning of the Civil War, that would be just one chapter. It really did feel like one chapter, just stitching together all the new parts. That's why it likely felt stronger, because this is likely the end of the arc that Pirate started before with the null mode, right? This is what it was. This is the climax, which is likely why it felt stronger than the Deadlands part, because the Deadlands is the start of something else. We're finally getting, like, lore drops, or at least starting to get lore drops, or information is being flown to us about what the fuck is. I mean, gnomes. Gnomes will know things, right? That's the whole idea behind it. And that's the beginning of one arc, while the other is the climax of another. So that's the disparity in the strength of the two pieces. And I think it's a fair one, because could you imagine if the Nalmud was overshadowed by a bunch of gnomes showing up? No
Oh yeah.
offense, but I would not be happy with that. Not
Did
after
you
like spending all that time wading through the new stuff.
did you think the two sort of pieces work together, or do you think they kind of should have been split up between different
Okay.
chapters?
The problem here is Pirate has 3, maybe 4 concurrent stories going. If you look back to the prior chapter with Fetohep and what happened with the horns and everything there, so they're sort of blending all of these stories together in as organic a way as possible. But from a structural point of view, look at how everything kind of smushes together. If you look at it from the outside, from the storyteller, it's like 13 explosions happening at the same time. It makes sense why they're all happening at the same time, but they are all happening at the same time. So they are all blending together. So pieces are falling by the wayside, and things are being trampled over, and like the horns got pulled out of their whole thing. You would think in a more typical, like if we were looking at an anime or a manga or something with a very typical structure, you'd see the climax of one arc, the completion of all these, everybody would get more powerful, and then they move on to the next story. It would be very one. Instead, what we're getting is a very One Punch Man escalation, where there's a battle happening, and then somebody with a bigger who needs to be punched, who's even more stronger, shows up, and then somebody shows up to deal with them, and then somebody shows up to deal with them, and somebody shows up to deal with them, all at the same time, one after another, and they all need to be punched. So
We do
that
have multiple. Go ahead.
no, that's it. That's what it feels like to me.
No, I would agree with that. I do kind of actually like the multiple levels that we're working on. Obviously, we've got the Deadlands going on, and that's kind of like the start of maybe an epic battle. Then we have this sort of historical battle that's going on, or historical fallout of a prior battle that we don't really know about going on with the Nolmoot. And we don't really see how the Nolmoot maybe quite works with into the Deadlands story yet. I'm sure it'll all come together, but I actually do like the looks at these different scales. So you're right, there's always like one more thing to be punched, but I think one thing to sort of think about is the scale at which these different events are happening.
Right.
And so that's interesting to me.
Because the Null Civil War and the addition of the Drakes is like one continental scale. Then we have and we have the similar aspect in Tarandria and in Balaros, and the Chandrarian conflict too. They're all continental conflicts that are just happening within the scope of those stories. And then you step one up from that, you have Fetohep and the Iron Vanguard and Droth declaring an emergency that everybody needs to come and deal with. And then you have a step up from that, which is, I think, the Dead Gods. I think that's the existential threat behind all of this.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm hoping, but like I said, there's another punch. There's got to be. I don't know. Pirate could go even bigger. All right, that's it for me.
All right, so we'll wrap up general impressions, and then we'll get into the big topic that everyone's been itching to kind of probably get started with. So Comrade Burv says that it was actually volume 1 for Nolmoot. So dear gods, yeah, Nolmoot has been anticipated for a while, and we're finally wrapping it up in volume 8. And apparently I have wrong opinions, Aaron forever. So yes, I am the sanity when it comes to Aaron love and appreciation. Not that I don't love her, but it's good to have different opinions. Jason D says that Ciri going full Earth Dragon was wonderful, and the payoff of seeing him show that he's going to grow up and be a good leader was poignant. I felt like a lot of parents would get that moment of pride and joy that the first gardener displayed. Metamir said that they really enjoyed the whole chapter. It would have been better, probably, though, to split things into multiple chapters, or just to take longer to read it. Having the final revelations from Satar and Yulran was great, although I was frustrated that Bella stepped in out of nowhere to reveal the daemon that just really stole their thunder. The Deadland stuff felt kind of rushed. Amerhaim's changing of the rules seemed a bit out of left field as well. It's pretty clear that the gods and gnomes are both masters of hacks and BS. Oshi said, though, that Bella was actually quite foreshadowed, so in a disagreement to Metamir. All right, so we're going to start out with kind of the really big, wonderful discussion point that Jason got us started in. Ciri is showing off his dragon powers. What did you guys think of this epic kind of scene where he's in the council room and he's like, we've got to go save the Mishra, the Leonet's daughter, and then this big revelation of like, oh, well, you have to go do it because I'm gonna die if she dies. I lost it. I couldn't stop laughing. I was cry laughing the entire time of reading that scene, and then that wonderful line reveal of the Druid saying, "Oh, she's getting more like Magnolia every day." That just all the different combinations of that scene with Asteria rushing out of the gate to head to Nolmoot. Did you guys like that scene? Do you see Ciri in a better light? Do you still dislike him? Oshi, do you like Ciri a bit more now?
I don't know who Ciri is, but I don't have Apple.
You know who Ciri is.
Well, I don't use Apple. What's going on here? Why do you keep telling me to go talk to Ciri?
Do you like the Earth Dragon? Do you appreciate him more now?
I'm saying, guys, am I alone here? Is Ciri not the Apple thing?
It's one hell of a bit.
Yeah, all right.
Ha ha ha! I don't want to hear it.
So I don't know. I said it before. As far as I'm concerned, character-wise, I kind of wish he would die.
That means Mish is dead too, so I guess nobody would be in agreement with you.
No, I'm fine with. Why would she have to die for him to die? He could die before her. Why? Why are you trying to kill Mersha? What is wrong? So this is what I'm hearing from Asteria. She wants Mersha to die, so because if Sire dies, she has. Like, this is so mean. This is so mean, Asteria.
I don't have a problem. We needed an epic, tragic death. She's kind of like prime candidate material. Just saying. Let's see. Void22 says the dragons are the gold standard for fantasy creatures, at least for me. It was nice to see a dragon do something suitably epic again. Comrade Burv. Why is that in your... Oh, that's right, you lost a bet. Okay, Comrade Burv says that Ciri is the Earther in Belleros. Well, I guess we have multiple series. Always good to have that.
Not really, no, but sure.
Yes, it is Ciri like Ciri, Burv.
No, like Sire.
Yeah, Ciri.
Not engage her in this insanity.
Like Seer.
That would be SEE. All right, we're not going to get into a whole thing about pronunciations. We could literally go on forever.
You're the one who starts it.
This is like Wiggles and Pisces and Pissy versus Pissies.
I mean, that's actually a really old word. So.
And
right,
Wiggles used the correct pronunciation after it was pointed out.
Faye says that the character is well played, and while he gets to grow a little bit, he still gets to be his immature self. I would say that it's nice to see his powers growing. We did get kind of a nod to Raph is headed up to find Teriarch when, she's being hunted down by her minders. I think the thing that I really like to see here is we finally got a lot of pretty much everybody except Palace in play now is headed to Nolmute. And then we've got this wonderful Nier scene that's coming in, and Nier is just like, I'm gonna go crazy. I can't get back home to save my frailing friends and families. I'm just gonna go crazy and start attacking drakes. So we've kind of got everybody headed to Nolmute, and I would imagine that the next time we see this, we're gonna see everybody kind of converging on Nolmute, see what the fallout is.
Can I ask a group a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So Palas is not sending anyone anywhere to this ridiculous civil war, but Chaldeon is probably the biggest stupid bastard in the entire continent. Everybody talks about him like that. So
Reeler, yeah.
he divided the Newt with this revelation. It could have been a very political thing, and in the end, the Gnolls would have been working together. Instead, he reveals this thing. He hires Bellavere to reveal this thing, which I still think she created.
That's
Or
right, he
helped
hired
create.
her.
Did you forget the entire scene where she went to...
Yes, I did. Until you mentioned it.
Okay, some people.
I was wondering
Okay.
why she showed up randomly.
How is it random? We've had 18 chapters of her being around this.
It's been
She's mentioned in the
forever.
tale that she's allied with the Plains Eye and the city, and she helped
But
make their pact happen. Like, what the fuck?
No, it's been forever since that scene. I totally get it. I was like, just
It's
why
been
is
a
she
few
here?
weeks.
It's been forever.
Anyway.
All right. Other things
What do you think? The question I was going to ask is, so what do you think Palas and Chaldeon will do? I mean, clearly they're going to do something, and while everybody's busy, because this, what?
Oh no, I was just saying. Well, you're right. Like he's up to something, right? Everybody's distracted. So what is he up to? And do you think he's in line with Fedohep and he's dealing with that? Do you think he's trying to combat Mears?
I don't know. Here's the thing: Pirate always likes to do the Scarlet Pimpernel, not Scarlet Letter. What is it? Scarlet Letter? No. What's the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle one where they hide something in plain sight?
The Scarlet. Oh, the letter in the bookcase or whatever.
Yeah. I forget what the name of the story is, but anyway, hide something in plain sight. So Pirates talked all about this, talked up all of this, and explicitly not mentioned what any of Palas's armies are doing, what anyone from Palas is doing. The only one we get even a hint of mention, I think, is Salas. Salas is headed that way. And
Actually, I don't know what he's doing. He made it out of Ateslia. Where is he headed?
Exactly. We know nothing about Palas's moves.
Oh, wait. Do you think he's going to the Ants?
Seriously, I maybe. Like, there is this thing where Chaldeon can play everybody, and there is the not insignificant chance that part of Magnolia getting involved in this was seen by Chaldeon, and he's like, alright, she's in with us, she wants this to happen, so I'm going to help her. Like, Chaldeon has spent 100 years trying to keep the Drakes from killing themselves, and if he sees a chance, there was this. Remember, after Aaron's death, he came out and said, "Okay, now's the time to do something." Yeah, everybody's talking about an epic death. I think it's going to be Chaldeon.
Well, he is set to. I almost wonder. He's got so many death flags just because of old age around him. It has to be somebody else. But. Or it might force Salas to actually step up, like Chaldean's been trying to go for. Let's get some other thoughts in. So the you were looking for a study in Scarlet, Oshi, is apparently what the story is called.
That's what it is. I knew it was. There's too many Scarlets. Go ahead.
You named all of them. Let's see. We've got Comrade Burv doesn't really like the Earth Dragon because he kind of gets major frat boy vibes. Talks about women. The way he talks about women makes him feel uncomfortable. In terms of speculating on Niers, Chaldean's plan was in place way before Niers got to the continent. Yes, but I wonder if it's adapted to Niers being there. Void 22 thinks that Palace has achieved its goals. The Knolls are divided, blame is shifted to Plainseye, whoever wins is weaker for it. That's true. We know Plainseye is involved. Or not Plainseye. We now know Plainseye is involved. That was kind of confirmed with the whole Damon reveal. And we are blaming Fissable for a lot of the Drake stuff. But Palace seemed to have a hand in it too, right? And Chaldean's kind of distracted from Palace's role. So I wonder if they had a bigger role than we know. Uvid thinks that Chaldean is doing his best to extract himself and keep Palace away from the whole issue. Courier is countering that Chaldean's probably not going to die because of too many death flags. I'm not sure what the Maviola reference is, Courier. What do you mean by that?
I mean that Maviola had all the death flags and then didn't die, but then died.
That's true. So maybe Chaldean is going to kick the bucket. Let's see. You didn't think that Courier didn't think any city is innocent of meddling with outside politics. They work as a whole, but present in a singular front. Okay, so maybe it's just not just Palace, but it's everybody. Elduran doesn't think that anyone's going to die. Medimir says that Ciri really needs to grow up. His decision was quite rash. On one hand, I hope things work out, but on the other hand, I hope there are consequences. Okay, so not some love for our slaying dragon, but we'll see. Speaking of Bellavere, we had a few questions about what she was doing on those crossroads, right? We know that they were headed to... We know Bellavere and her quote-unquote daughter were... I really think the daughter needs a new name. It's not Bevel... I feel like... Anyway. So we know that Bellavere and the daughter were headed to Nolmu, but they encountered this stranger wrapped in bandages, and there's a big question of who was this, or what was this person that they encountered, and where were they headed? So some theories were that it could be Ware, right? Ware did show up to save Mersha at Nolmut. Any other thoughts on who it might be? Comrade Burr says that Mavola should be named Mevil isn't. I agree with that. I actually like that name. Or Noviola by Run. Oshi, did you have any thoughts about who the person on the crossroads could be? I personally thought it was Terry or Eldavin.
I thought it was revealed at the end of the Newt who the person on the crossroads is.
Who was it? Did I miss that? I missed that.
It's Ware.
It was Ware?
Who else would... He had... he was a strict... You know what? Yeah, whatever. Because when you read the section, the same description used for Ware as the Traveler a bunch of different times all across the times he's appeared is used for the quote-unquote stranger. That's where Ware is using the same path to get to the Newt. The only thing that was weird about that section was she said that there were people who took tolls, so you have to wonder what the fuck she's talking about. That was some kind of question, but it was weird.
Bella's old, like old, so whoever's demanding or whatever is demanding tolls has to be... Do you think it's equivalent to like the elf age that we saw? Or like Fae oriented?
What do you... No, I mean there's lots of like skill-based and special roads, I'm sure, all over the place that people have made magically.
Well, I mean, who would Bella be nervous about, even afraid of, right? She's not giving a fuck about anything that we've seen so far.
Yeah, but she has to obey rules. Yeah, but she has to obey rules, and it wasn't so much she was afraid of it. She just didn't want to pay the price of the road. So it's like you've been crossing through. It's like you've been avoiding paying the bridge toll a lot, and the bridge troll is still around, and it might wake up, and you're like, "Uh-oh, let's get out of here. I don't want to deal with him."
She was nervous though, so something... I mean, no, she may not want to pay the tolls, but there's something enough to make her nervous. The only other thing we've seen that is with the faith. Do you think that the crossroads... I know you said it's skill-based, but do you think maybe it has to do with skills? Or not just skills, but like something to do with the religion or the faith? Jason D thinks that they're assuming a toll road operator, some sort of skill for not letting someone leave or automatically debiting the unpaid fines. She might just be afraid of a skill. Base says that it's a throwback to the Wheel of Time series. Comrade Burr says she obeys rules, quote unquote, and uses a village of people as yarn to write her name. Action Kermit thinks it's something to do with Bugs Bunny or the equivalent with a hastily painted toll booth. If Bella complains, Bugs tells her she's holding up the line. Bellavere looks back and sees, okay, you're just getting silly with the Bugs Bunny stuff. Fair enough. Okay, so we speculated on Bellavere and her showing up at Nolemoot. So let's sort of finish up with Nolemoot. What did you guys think of the luck daemon? It was kind of a callback to the dungeon beast or dungeon enemy that had like its whole components like Skinner, right? So was that too repetitive for you? Were you guys freaked out? What did you guys think of the luck demon? I thought it was a little bit, I mean, it's horrific, but I thought almost it was a little bit played out too. But it's definitely turned every Gnoll against the summoner, the luck summoner. And it explains what they're doing with all the skins. Yes, the story does give a direct comparison to Skinner, Comrade Burr. Void 22, go for it.
I think the most significant aspect of the luck daemon wasn't in sort of just the innate horror of it, which, as you said, is similar to crypt horrors and Skinner and whatever else there were, but it's in the personal connection to Mersha. It's not just random people, it's people who were killed and made part of this abomination specifically because they were like her. And the focus there is less, I think, on the horror of it and more on Mersha's recognition that she could have been that and her conviction to end it.
So do you think that the luck daemon is like a personal thing for Mishra to come overcome, or is it gonna be something larger for all Gnolls?
I think narratively it's both. Both for Mersha to overcome her own persecution and for the Gnolls as a whole to sort of make a different choice this time, that through their history they have either been actively hunting Doombringers or complicit in their genocide, and here's the chance for them as a species to make the other better decision.
I think it's less like Mishra's overcoming, and like you said, more about maybe the white Gnolls as a whole, or Gnolls themselves to overcome this historical crime per se. Bismer sort of says hopes that the daemon can be dismantled in a way that those beings that can be freed without them dying. Disagreed with me, saying it wasn't too repetitive because there was clear language explaining how it is actually unlike Skinner. Courier says that the daemon should be called the Luckener. Kylera says that Skinner wasn't powered by its skins, those were armor. This is a construct that grows in magical power from added bodies. The only similarity is its appearance. And Metamir is surprised that not everybody turned against Zero in that moment. Edron thinks that Mishra is the one who will actually overcome it. That I will free you, that's her next goal. And Comrade Burr says the way that Mishra didn't specifically look away, it's poor child that can't go 2 weeks without a lasting trauma added to the pile. The appearance of the daemon can be compared to Mishra's ball of agonizing trauma. I would agree. Ryoka seems to be the unlucky one, but Mishra seems to be our trauma character. I don't know if she's had a single moment that's not defined by some horror one way or another, but at least most of the people she's meeting recently haven't died. It was actually kind of cool to see that our golden Gnoll is actually a white Gnoll as well. Let's see. In terms of the Gnolls, did anybody have any other topics or any other questions that they wanted to bring up with the Nolemoot or the Gnolls in general? Otherwise, we'll move on to the Deadlands. While people are thinking, Metamir says that Mirsha is a survivor, which might make her more mentally resilient. That's true. Probably going through all that trauma makes her a little bit more apt to deal with it. Maybe she's seen too much already. Actually, one point that was interesting to me, sometimes you have to pay attention to when Pirate writes, right? There's stuff that's like a one-off reference, and then it comes back to be a big thing later on in several chapters down the line, right? Crossbows, the warning about the crossbows before Aaron kind of half died was quite prevalent throughout multiple chapters that nobody took notice of. At the start of this chapter, we did see this warning about multiple crimes committed before many generations prior that resulting generations are still paying for. Do you think that's only specific to the Knolls, or do you think that's going to come up again with other characters? I kind of think that that was one of those things that it's a one-off reference, and we're going to see that be relevant, maybe potentially with other stuff. Dunky, you wanted to talk.
Yeah, the talking about the people paying for like the mistakes and stuff of their ancestors. In this chapter, that wasn't just with the Knolls, it was also elves and half-elves. Which really, in this chapter, there was like a big like connection between the like meeting of the tribes in the Civil War there and the God Wars and the current fight against the dead gods, with how like in both cases the main deciding fight already happened. Knolls decided to slaughter Doombearers. The bad gods won and then died after they won. And then now there's a pushback that was sort of inevitable, but not as big as the first.
Yeah, it does seem that this is kind of actually, now that you pointed out, it's our theme for the chapter. So sometimes there's a theme that's trying to tie the different points of view. So maybe this is our theme that ties the Deadlands with what's going on with the Knolls about this sort of subsequent payout by generations for crimes past. So you're saying it applies to both the Knolls and the Elves. Base agreed with you before they deleted their comment. Void22 definitely thinks it's going to be a theme. Okay, so speaking of the elves, Mr. Europe asked the question, could the goblins still be elves? Probably not. There was a line in there about, remember how the elf sort of said Springnea? She said this blade has killed or killed every species except the youngest. And if you guys recall, we've seen the youngest species mentioned before. Do you think that's in reference to the ants, or do you think that's in reference to the goblins? I personally think it's in reference to the goblins, and that would be an argument for me that says goblins are not elves. Any thoughts there? Hell thinks it's the goblins. Void22 agrees it's the goblins. So we're definitely agreeing that elves are not goblins at this point. Jason D has even given up after the Springanea reveal. It looks like everybody, Duncan 2012.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Springanea. Sprigina? Sprig. We're going to call her Sprig. So that's what Sprig said. Okay, so goblins are the new species before the ants die. Definitely the goblins. Goblins are what's left of... Okay, loser. Comrade Burr thinks that goblins are what's left of the elves. So do you think that the elf doesn't know about the ants, or do you think that the blade has actually also killed ants as well? Oshi, you were gonna say something?
Oh no. Okay. Do you need? Okay. No. I honestly, this is a ridiculous conversation that keeps coming up, and the fact that you even entertain it is insulting. Goblins are not elves. Elves are not goblins. We've had way too much evidence to the contrary, and besides, it's a silly idea.
My
There you
question
go.
was about the ants. If the youngest race is the goblins, then every other race has been slain. Does that mean that the ants have also been slain by the
The
sword?
youngest race to the people who are old. who are not around now, who have mostly died out, and who have no idea what the fuck is going on in the world. Also, youngest race to a bunch of people who are also dead or so old that they haven't even noticed what the hell's been happening in the last couple of 100 years.
I've been aware.
Also, how many of them know what the hell is happening under Rear? The only person who knows what's happening under Rear is like Sylvania and shit, and she doesn't call the goblins the youngest race, so fuck off, everybody.
Okay, all right. Well, Bismir thinks that the goblins are baby elves. Yuvid thinks that goblins are a result of elf times gnomes. Antinium are at least 6,200 years old. Ants don't go to the Deadlands, so she probably wouldn't know them. I guess it depends on how much you're involved. So fair enough. Gods are way after the gods, or Antinium were way after the gods died by Donkey 22. Void 22 thinks that the ants are a product of Sleepy. So youngest probably just means for the age of the gods. So ants are kind of this separate. Well, but okay, so let's actually look at that line that about Sleepy, right? The gnomes specifically said, "Oh, we thought we killed the gods, but we missed 6, and the Thingin were here." So there's been some debate that the Sleepy, the Thingin were here, is a god or not. The gnomes acknowledged were here. Does this confirm that Sleepy is a god or not a god? I would say now we have confirmation that Sleepy's a god. Donkey 2012 thinks that it's actually a demon. And Kel says that we know the Intinium were created by Sleepy. Void 22 thinks that the Sleepy is god adjacent. Okay, any other thoughts about that? We have lots of throwaway lines by the gnomes revealing random things, so we could talk about every little thing, but I just thought that was interesting because we finally have an acknowledgement of Sleepy and recognizing what that might possibly be. Okay, Yodas actually kicks us into our next topic. Yodas thinks that Sleepy is what's responsible for classes, essentially a god created by the gods. We did get a massive reveal or a little bit more lore about the system. So skills, magic, unavailable in the Deadlands, and it's something that we took as truth, but it's actually artificial, as is the rest of the system. So what are your all's thoughts about that? About this reveal, about the gnomes and the class system, and now we suddenly have skills in the Deadlands, which seems to have been the gnomes' plan all along. Personally, I sort of seem to think, or I was interpreting that the who was it actually that had the Oshi? Do you remember who had it? Who was it that had slipped the gear into the system? Was it Ederham or was it the gnomes?
Payne is the one who slipped it into the system. He was there when it was created. He likely created a little backdoor, just like any good programmer does. It's likely something like what do I call it? It's something that can't be changed easily.
The gnomes seem to have been planning for him to activate that, though. So this is Plan A, right? Is to him activate that.
I mean, it's kind of obvious that how would they have been able? It's kind of obvious that they're. I mean, the typical thing for gnomes is that they're tricksters, right? So they and they play chess, right? So the scene implies that they thought about what are the possibilities and who are the other side, who are we playing? Emmerhane's a coward who's an asshole, so he probably has some backups in case things go iffy, and if not him, then some of the other gods will, because none of them want to die. So what can we do to force them to do something that will help us? So that's how you think about things in chess. What move can I do to get them to make a move so I can make a move so they can make a move so that I can win? And that's what was laid out at the end of that chapter. And the fact that you can't get there on your own and you need me. Come on, Asteria, wake up.
This is why we have these discussions.
16-hour days for 4 days and then had to speak for 2.5 hours to 100 people and embarrass myself. And I can think of this.
Well, Oshi, this is why we have these discussions, is to point out to what people may have missed and entertain these theories. That's what's enjoyable about them. And some of us work 20-hour days without very little sleep for the last 3 weeks. So I don't want to hear it. Let's see. Not to outdo us in terms. We should all be getting our rest. We shouldn't be talking about and competing to not sleep. That's not good. Anyway, Yoda. Okay, so we said that. Okay, so Yoda thinks that Sleepy might be a god created by the gods. Yudovic says that Teriarch is explicitly said that Sleepy's not a god, but the dead gods do seem to be afraid of Sleepy, as contributed by Base. Metamir says that Sleepy seems to have the power to alter or create life, which is godlike. Comrade Burv sort of says, well, hey, they definitely planned for him to do that. They brought the time monster. Aaron saw it was one step in a master plan, and him bringing classes back was the end goal. Kylera agrees with Oshi that it forced them to burn their last cards. Jason D thinks Plan A is brinkmanship, the threat of mutually assured destruction, forcing the gods to empower the gnomes. Okay, so fair enough. We do have the Deadlands. We did get a mention of this place called Helest. Do you think Helest is here? This was a question asked by Mr. Europe. I would say Helest seems to be another, we know that people go to multiple different places in the Deadlands. Helest seems to be another area of the Deadlands. I wouldn't say it's here. Any disagreements? Void 22 says they doubt it. We know that Rahir is empty of souls. Really, the gnomes actually didn't even seem to be aware of what was going on under here. Comrade Burr says Hilarious is the Deadlands, brings back classes to Hilarious, and then everyone there gets their classes back. Base thinks that it's the real hill where the worst go. Yeah, we have had Rahir referred to as hell. I don't know, though, that it makes sense that is Helest. Maybe Helest is just the name of the Deadlands. Might be a holdover. Void 22 contributes. Action Kermit thinks that hell is supposed to be a trash bin for corrupt souls, but it's containment, breach, and here. Okay, so you guys are really embracing that this skill system is kind of like a computer program. Action Kermit says, in godlike things, is slurping up the power, using it to make monsters. So you think that the Deadlands is actually powering Sleepy, and that's what's creating all these monsters from here. Bisver doesn't think it's Rahir. Rahir's concept in Consignal Deadlands not can be confused for Helest, which is my guess, is it's just another Consignal-like plane. Void 22, hell is just known to be horrible, so they called Rahir that. Yoda thinks that Sleepy is powered by the same power as the other gods and uses it to bestow classes. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. As soon as we get to Sleepy, we should get to know more about the ant colonies that are over there, and just more about Rahir. Actually, Rahir is probably the only continent we haven't really touched base with almost this entire volume. I think we had one chapter by then. Almost everybody else has got ongoing storylines, and Rahir is kind of the one that's been left out. This is interesting. Ants also have been largely left out for the most part. Comrade Birth doesn't think it's subtle. The god of magic says, bring everything back to Helios, and then the people in the Deadlands get everything back. Deadlands equals Helios. And Uvik is correcting me and said we did have the Rahir and Tinium chapter. Yes, that is correct. Very, very brief look-in with the Antiniums, but very short. Jason D says that maybe Consignal is the whole wandering in world, and Helest is just the fancy name for the Deadlands. So the exception part was him going into the accepted file. Deadlands equals Helest and changing settings. Location Consignal, exceptions Helest is contributed to by Base. It does seem like the Deadlands are maybe Consignal, and then the exceptions are this other area, Helest. Anybody know programming code to kind of break that down for us? The Deadlands seem to be Consignal itself, and then there's a subsection called Helest that seems to be the exception. Somebody who's going to say something? Courier, thoughts as an outside reader who's not read this chapter yet?
I think the bison burger I just finished cooking is delicious.
Now I want burgers. I curse you. I curse you. Ren agrees with me, or agrees with Base. Consignal is the Deadlands. Okay. Ren says Consignal is the Deadlands, and so Helest has to be something. And we know that souls disappear. It's just where else do they go after they exit the Deadlands? Which is also interesting. Okay. All right, and then one of the other... Okay, so Bismer thinks that Helest was a separate plane, but now I see that Base is posted. It seems like Helest is a subsection. All right, so we're kind of agreeing that we don't really know about a lot about Helest. It's a subsection. We just don't really know a whole lot about it. So more questions. More questions to ask before the end of the volume. That kind of brings us to this wonderful contribution by somebody. It was actually the very first topic / question brought up. We know that the gods are referred to by various parts. Tamaroth was referred to by their beard, and other gods are referred to by various things. And we got lots of character description in this chapter. We got comparisons to, I think it was buttercups or tulips or various things, and then Consigna's description was there sometimes wobbly breasts by the gnomes. Do you think this was a throwaway line, or are we going to have some? Is there a reason that is there a more metaphorical reason, perhaps, that the goddess of death is being referred to by her wobbly breasts? Somebody was going to say something. Void22 thinks it's just making fun of the fact that the age shifts. Nabisco says that it's consignal as a whole. Face thinks it's just the gnomes just joking around about the ages. Dunkey says it's probably just an exclamation like Tamaroth's beard, the oldest version of Cephalid's. Oh, okay, Cephalid's tits. So maybe Cephalid tits comes from Consigna's wobbly breasts and was a replacement when the gods died. Interesting. Ren thinks that they're taking the piss because of the rest being saggy in her older form. But I like the connection to Cephalid's tits. That's an interesting one. That's good insight there.
Okay.
What, Oshi? Did you have some thoughts about this explanation?
I wonder why no one else is speaking. What's wrong with you people? Exciting stuff's happening.
They like they like my voice, or maybe I'm not being entertaining. I'm being too entertaining. They don't want to talk.
I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? We usually pick the topics and we give you space to do it, but nobody's like, what do you guys want to talk about? We're all sitting here. We're all just hanging out. So what do you want to talk about?
That does conclude my last topic. So if you guys have anything else that you want to chat about, feel free. Otherwise, I'll wrap up the recording and turn it over to free reign.
This is the time to drop the wildest of theories. Bring out your crack. Fill out the time. Smoke.
We kind of already got that shut down with the gnome versus elves debate. Jason D thinks that gnomes might be leprechauns. All right, I'm gonna kill the recording here. We will open it to free discussion.
I did have a thing. I put.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that because there are so few people left who know about the gods, any description that they give them becomes quote unquote canon. So Teriarch refers to Tamaroth by Tamaroth's beard, and because there's so few people left, his beard is now canon. That no matter what form he has a beard. So the gnomes doing this are basically trying to give the 3-in-1 god somewhat wobbling breasts, basically.
Okay, and
for purely funny reasons, but I do think the descriptions that people give them are what's giving them that form.
Well, how does that work with the foreigner gods that approached the Deadlands later? Like, the dancing god came from elsewhere, as did the Lost. I mean, the Lost makes sense because no one thinks anything about him, so of course he doesn't have a form. But
well, I mean, there are probably more people in the world than Teriarch that know about the dead gods.
Well, did Bellavere know about the gods? I mean, it seems like only dragons so far.
I feel like she has to know about the gods just by a function of her class and how advanced she is. Like, she deals so much with fate that she probably knows gods better than a lot of gods know themselves with how they interact with fate.
I believe that most people know, like, people like Bellavere know that there's something in the Deadlands eating souls. I don't think she knows what it is. Yeah, I mean, when Pawn used like holy magic, she did not know what it was and ran away. So I feel like if she knew about God, she would know about any kind of faith-based system. Wouldn't catch
Jason
her off
D.
guard like that.
Yeah, and Jason D seems to be agreeing with you. A belief-based dominative determinism. People believe he has a beard, so he has to. So maybe by adding recognizable features to the gods, it traps their forms and somehow limits their power? Possibly?
In an abstract way, that would actually explain why the lost god even showed up in the first place, because he represents the unknown to the, I don't know, collective gestalt of everyone alive.
Because it's very important that everyone, whenever they talk about the gods, they say dead gods. And because everyone's saying dead gods, that makes them dead. And, you know, since Teriarch says Tamaroff's beard, he's referring to the gods in some way, so that affects them.
Yoda thinks it's the opposite. By using their name, it actually gives them power, so having a phrase is just a promotion. More power up.
Oh, I agree with that too, definitely. I feel like Teriarch knowing about the dead gods is part of the reason why they won't go away. As long as there are people who know about them,
This is
they'll
why you kill
continue to
all the
live.
dragons.
And that, you know, if we're really talking crack theories, that might be why the goblins are trying to kill everybody.
Oh, I meant dragons, but yes, also the goblins. Though I figured the goblins would have been the tool to kill everything that knows about gods. But that's a whole different theory.
Well, my theory is that right now the gnomes are being. So you remember at the end of Volume 7, everything seemed to be coming into line, right? Aaron was going to go meet with Lakin, and everything was working out with the Earthers reuniting, and plans were coming into place, and then it all got blown to bits because Aaron got shot by crossbows. Right now, it seems like everybody's coming together to res Aaron. The gnomes have a plan. They're experts. They're literally overpowered new species. Something's gonna blow this out of the water. I don't know what.
Lon's gonna blow it out the water.
Who?
And Ryok is gonna be alongside. That's where the blowing comes from.
I just don't see Volume 8 wrapping up all this stuff. Something's gonna happen.
Because one big thing we have to look forward to is that now we have literal billions of ghosts, some of which came from like times where people got to like level 90, and they can all use their skills again. I mean, what if somebody just has a straight up like resurrect person, skill?
Oh, that would be kind of cool if people could actually like end up out of the Deadlands, because we know there are people who can move in and out.
The dead bring back the living.
I mean, people were speculating that like pirates, doing this arc to trim down the cast. What if they just expand the cast? Now you have souls in the
They
real
separate
world.
them into Team Living and Team Dead.
Nobody's died so far this volume, barring minor characters.
Yeah, rip minor characters.
That's a good thing. Ish. There's more people to keep track of. Actually, yeah. What do necromancy abilities look like in the Deadlands? Like, what are they necromizing?
I feel like there'd be a lot of death mana in the Deadlands. They just haven't been able to use it.
But their powers over dead things. So would they be able to control other ghosts?
Who knows? I mean, I didn't we see during the village raid that like there were like wraiths and spirits of kinds under control of the moldy one. I forgot his name.
The putrid one. Yeah, the olden times had much like controlled or even free wraiths and banshees were a lot more common. Just the dead being in the world of the living kind of feeds over into a lot of other narrative loops.
True. Slucky points out that the unique skills like the garden, what happens to them? Does that mean that they can then summon these like unique places to the Deadlands? Like, is that now a connection?
I think, holy shit, no, actually that's really big. Erin still has control of that unique skill. She's going to bring the garden to the Deadlands.
Because those would almost act as like waypoints, right? That people can funnel through if they have to be in both places.
Now
It's
the
almost
question is though, if they could turn the skills back on, can they just turn it off again?
well, you'd have to. I guess the Emmerheim would somehow turn it off, right? They trigger the system to turn it off somehow. But can they
Emmerheim's
go
not going to
back?
tell anyone where the plug is. No pulling.
Yeah, it's
Because
interesting.
I'm wondering just how much power Emmerhan. I'm sorry if I shouldn't be unmuted, but I'm
No,
just
you're fine. You're
regular.
fine.
I wonder how much power he does have. Like, if he can hack the system completely, why
Well,
hasn't he? You know?
he slipped. He slipped. Remember, he slipped it in. He doesn't have control over the system, but when it was being made, he slipped in some sort of code or language that would allowed him to do one or two small things.
So that actually makes me wonder, was the system created to give people the ability to combat things in death? And then after the existential crisis was ended, he pulled an oopsie whoopsie, and now there's only a few people that are able to combat in death, which are the dead gods.
I mean, I think of it as just two rooms. Like in a game, you have like two separate rooms, and they just turned magic and skills off in this room, and they said, all right, when the souls die, they go here.
Oh yeah. I was going a little more existential than that, but yeah.
Ah, I see.
I was thinking
Based-
like the system is like a plaything of the gods, but why was it made? And is there another layer that's preventing the dead from using magic?
Well, Base has that quote, right? The gods made the world as they made laid laws and the very foundation of magic and the nature of our souls. So it does seem to imply that they did something to magical. Well, I would argue that the magic thing is with Pisces, right?
There's
We're
no
seeing that,
implication. Like the system was created after magic already existed, so they
right?
use magic to create something else and then sidetrack magic.
Well, remember how Pisces is learning like original magic through the book and not the like. I almost wonder if that's a nod to his stuff, where he's like, "Oh, this is actual magic," versus like whatever the gods did that results in the magic that they're all learning now.
It's the difference between being the tool and using a tool.
Yeah.
Except it works both ways, because maybe if you're deep in the system, you are the tool. You know, you're using a tool to. I don't know.
It had a crack theory. Says that somebody had a crack theory that the ghost will be in Aaron's garden. Bitter part of the bittersweet ending is Deadlands getting nuked and Aaron managing to save a few by funneling them into the garden. So there is that. Night nav skills are active, and there is that waypoint. Maybe we'll have a ghost garden, garden full of ghosts. Visionary thinks that the system pumps up souls with awesomeness, higher level, brighter soul, tastier soul. Jason D thinks that the lady elf is actually Titania, and that Aaron. Okay, Yuzik thinks that Aaron might be the new dead god, better than the old one. Yoda says the system was created to give the people of in-world power, but the gods got greedy in how much they wanted to control that, and the people rebelled. Perhaps they also started to threaten other realms. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up here. So we've got lots of sort of speculation and theory. This chapter is concluding plot points, but only brought us a lot more questions about, as Oshi pointed out, a whole new arc with the Deadlands. So great thoughts, guys. I'm going to turn it over to free discussion.